Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from DailyRacingForm, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hey everyone, I'm David Aragona, and this is the December 21st edition of Horses to Watch, the final Horses to Watch of 2022 as we look ahead to next year. But before we move on to 2023, just want to take a look back at some trips from the last week at Aqueduct, horses that we might be able to bet back when they run back in the new year. A few horses that didn't have ideal trips in their races. A lot of rain in the New York area over the past week that caused there to be a wet track basically consistently from Thursday through Saturday of last week's card at Aqueduct. It was actually still drying out on Sunday, but they had a sealed racetrack in place for the first 3 days of that racing week. So we're going to begin with two races from last Thursday, December 15th's card at Aqueduct, beginning with the fourth race of that day. It's a maiden special weight event going 6 furlongs for 2-year-old fillies. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to focus on a first-time starter, the number 4 Balpool. And you can see in those light blue and pink silks, she kind of breaks a half step slowly, gets bounced around at the start. The runner to her inside comes out on her a little bit. She broke inwards a bit herself, sustains a hard bump, and just found herself towards the back of the pack in the opening strides. You can see, though, she quickly passes a couple of horses moving down the backstretch, trying to get back into position. But as you move your eyes to the left, to the front end of this race, you can see it's a pretty bunched pack towards the lead, usually indicative of a pace that's not that fast. You can see the fractions going up 23 and 2. They're going to go over 47 to the half, nearly 48 to the half. This was not a particularly fast-paced race, so it makes it difficult for a horse like the number 4 Balpool to get back into the race, to get involved after breaking so slowly and racing out of position. You can see her rider, Junior Alvarado, starting to motivate her a little bit right here, but she's not really going anywhere, trying to run through that intense, sloppy kickback. The two rivals that are behind her kind of range up on either side of her, but once she straightens out in the stretch right here, you can see she's racing greenly on her left lead there. But she does level off pretty well in the final furlong, and she's going to start to pass horses as they come onto the wire. She's actually going to run up into fourth at the end of this race, and right here you can see she switches over to her correct right lead and actually gets a little bit of a burst of energy as she's running on between those two runners as they move on to the finish, to finish fourth in this race. And I thought, all in all, it was not a bad effort at all for this horse. Like I said, she was making her career debut. She has a little bit of pedigree. It's kind of a low-profile pedigree, but the connections paid $75,000 for her. She's trained by Rob Actors, who doesn't really have a reputation for winning with young horses, but he can do well. In a small sample, he's done a pretty decent job with some first-time starters and second-time starters at decent prices. So I think Balpool is one that we can expect to run better second time out, especially if she's able to get over that poor start that she showed on debut. Let's move on to another race from that Thursday, December 15th card at Aqueduct. This was actually the following race that day, race 5. This was another maiden special weight event, but for the New York bred older horses going 6.5 furlongs. We'll break these runners from the gate, and I'm going to focus on the number 4, Callaloo. This is a second-time starter for trainer David Donk, and he is the horse in the purple with the lime green sleeves that you can sort of see moving up between horses right there, the number 4. He actually breaks pretty well and is in contention with the leaders for about half a furlong of this race, but then starts to drop back. You can see his rider not really motivating him to maintain position down the backstretch, just kind of letting the chips fall where they may. And we could see as he starts to take that kickback and horses range up to his outside, this horse starts to throw his head up. He's not really stretching out his stride, and he's just sort of racing a little bit hesitantly. And the rider is also giving him a ride that's a bit tentative. And you can see he starts to drop back towards the inside. And as horses start to fade on the inside, and it should be noted on this Thursday card, the rail path being right down on the rail was probably not the best place to be. And this horse does spend a good portion of his trip right down that inside path. And you can see the number 1 is sort of backing up in his face here. He has to angle off the inside right here. And after being up with the leaders for the first half furlong, he suddenly finds himself all the way back in last by the time they reach the quarter pole. He's still racing a little bit greenly. He kind of has this tendency to want to lug in his races, and we saw that again right here as he's racing on his left lead, eventually switches over right here and actually does finish okay to nearly get up for third here. Callaloo was making the second start of his career, and he was taking a big jump up in class. He had made his debut for a $25,000 tag against New York bred maiden claimers and had run deceptively well that day. I didn't do that race on Horses to Watch, but it was one that I consider highlighting on this show when he made his debut a little over a month ago, because he had raced greenly early and dropped way out in the early going, was a good 15 or 18 lengths behind the leader after the first half mile, but he made a good late run through the stretch that day, actually covering his last eighth of a mile in 11.89 seconds, according to Trice. So had shown some potential in that debut. So I get why the connections, David Donk and the owners, decided to raise him all the way up in class to contest this maiden special weight race in his next start. Didn't quite work out, but in addition to that unusual ride and the tentative ride he got, and the fact that he just seemed a little bit green racing inside of horses, the race that we just watched also featured an extremely slow pace that was dominated up front. So he didn't really have any chance to get involved after he dropped so far back on the turn of that race. So Callaloo was a horse that I think has more ability than he's shown in both starts so far, and could do better if he's finally able to get a more aggressive ride in his subsequent start. Let's close things out with a race from last Saturday, December 17th card at Aqueduct. This was the race 6. It was a maiden special weight event for 2-year-olds going the 1 mile distance. Let's break these runners from the gate. I'm actually going to focus on the winner of this race, something that I don't often do on the show. I like to focus on horses that didn't have the chance to achieve their optimum result. But this horse, I think, even though he won the race, is probably going to continue to go forward off this performance. I'm talking about the number 3, Tapit Trice. You can see broke slowly, and that is a bit of a concern. He's done it now in both starts of his career, but I thought in his debut race, which took place a little over a month ago, he broke slowly and then was racing in heavy traffic for much of the race, was taking a lot of kickback, but considering that circumstance, got a good education and really was running on at the end once he finally was steered into the clear. And he seemed like a horse that would take a step forward off of that debut, and I think he did here. And moving down the backstretch, you can see his rider, Kendrick Carmouche, is kind of trying to avoid that situation they encountered first time out, where he was dealing with a lot of kickback. He's keeping him out in the center of the race course, but in doing so, he's covering a lot of ground. He's going 4 to 5 wide into this far turn. But he is advancing pretty nicely, and I think he's facing some talented horses in this maiden special weight event. He had finished just behind the number 2, Summer Cause, in each of their debuts, and the number 6, Slip Mahoney, a horse you can see is traveling very well at this point in the race. He's a runner that had debuted sprinting, was stretching out for the first time in this race, and did take a big step forward. But Tapit Trice is going to take a good run at him as they come through the stretch here, and you can see that number 6, he's going to be switched over to the left-handed stick by his rider, Dylan Davis, and he gets to drifting out pretty badly through the stretch. And you can see right here, he's impeding Tapit Trice a little bit. He's drifting out into his path. He takes a pretty hard bump right there, but Tapit Trice kind of gets emboldened by getting bumped from the inside. And he's actually going to really race this horse to the wire and stick his nose in front as they come onto the finish line. I really like this effort because this race was not one that featured a fast pace. Actually, if you look in Timeform US, the half mile and 6 furlong fractions are color-coded in blue. So it was a pretty slow pace considering the final time of this race. And I liked the way this horse powered home on the outside, and he seems like one that really is going to appreciate a further stretch out in distance in the future. It seems like he's one that might now be set up pretty well to try a Derby prep like the Grade 3 Withers, going 1 mile and 1/8 in early February. And he certainly has plenty of stamina in his pedigree, being by that excellent source of stamina, Tapit. And his Damn Dance of Trice, she was a pretty good race mare in her own right, but she is a 3/4 sister to Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner Jaywalk. So it's a really classy pedigree on the top and bottom side, and one that certainly suggests he'll do better with added distances in the future. So I think Tapit Trice is a 2-year-old that's about to turn 3 years old that you might want to keep an eye on for some of the Derby preps early next year. So those are all the horses to watch for this week, all the horses to watch really for 2022, but I'll be back with more episodes next year. If you want to follow these horses that I highlighted in this show or any previous shows moving forward, you can add them to your horse watch on DRF.com. Just add them to a list and you'll get email notifications when these horses run back in the future. So thanks for tuning in this week, and make sure to catch future episodes of Horses to Watch in 2023.